Intermission over.
Nice. It's almost like it was that was almost like the sequence to like Danny Phantom. Like do. He's Phantoms.
Hell
Nice,
yeah.
nice. All right, well, welcome back, guys. Thank you for that brief intermission. And where we last left off, we just finished one of my hot takes on Thanos, and
Yeah.
saying that he was basically not a bad guy, pretty much.
Out of context, that like sounds like very strange, but go back and watch that part so it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. You guys will get it. It's fine. It's
Yeah,
fine.
you guys got it. Yeah, we get it here at Two Sons
Got it.
Podcast.
You got it. You got it. You know the guy Beetlejuice. You ever heard of the
What?
guy Beetle? You ever heard of the guy Beetlejuice?
Yeah, yeah, I know Beetlejuice.
He does this thing where like there was this. It wasn't a skit, but it was like an interview where he had like a friend that had Tourette's, and like the friend was like struggling to speak, and he was like, "Not."
Really? And
Yeah.
what, like the musical or like the movie?
No, like no,
Oh, never mind, never mind. I thought you were never mind. I thought you. I know which Beetlejuice you're talking about now. I thought you were talking about the green guy.
no, no, no.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah, I know which one.
Well, moving
All
on.
right. Moving on from that, let's jump back into one of my hot takes, and this hot take is actually I did that one. I did that one. Hell yeah! So X Men: Days of Future Past is better than Avengers: Endgame. Let
Can
that sink in. Just let it sink in for a sec.
you say that one more time?
X Men: Days of Future Past is better than Endgame.
Can you? I know I've seen X-Men: Days of Futures Past. Can you give me a brief summary of what the movie was about, so then I could give you like a definitive answer?
So basically, as we know, X Men: Days of Future Past includes both part of the old and the new cast, including obviously Ian McKellen and Sir Patrick
Oh
Stewart
wait, is this
amongst
is this the movie where like they're getting hunted down by those like
the
cyborg like
Sentinels.
robotic the Sentinels, and then they have
Yeah,
and
and it
Jackman
involves
has to
Peter
go.
Dinklage as the villain,
Okay,
one of the
okay. Ooh, this is I don't know because I mean both movies. First of all, both movies, both Avengers Endgame and X-Men: Days of Futures Past, they're both taking a trip down memory lane when it comes to going back. Both movies are pretty much going back in time to.
technically the one of the biggest differences in terms of like going back in time is the only one that actually goes back in time is Wolverine, as in Hugh Jackman, but it's through basically his old body because of the way I believe Kitty Pryde sends him back.
Right.
And again, the stakes extremely high in both those movies, obviously, because if you remember if you guys go and watch the start of like X Men: Days of Future Past, basically like the world is destroyed, all mutants have been hunted down, and literally it starts off with the mutants being hunted down by the Sentinels, I believe I'm saying that right, and basically they stay the older version of Magneto and Professor X send Wolverine back to to what is it? It was during um what I don't 70s maybe. I don't exactly
Like
remember
so it
the
was like
exact.
70s, 80s. Like I think it was like
Yeah,
when like mutants were like still being somewhat discovered.
yeah. This is when Peter Dinklage, his character, is developing. Basically, like he's studying the mutants. Like and then the world finds about the mutants and all that fun stuff. And I just personally, I think it's probably the best X Men movie out there, out of all the X Men movies.
Um,
And I think it just balances because there are so many characters in it. Like obviously there are same versions of the same characters, but there's at least well over 15 to 20 like main characters in this film. Balance it beautifully. I don't think it doesn't feel long. Again, the only times I've really ever rewatched it was on TV. So if I gotta rewatch it on because I believe it's on Disney Plus. Are the X Men movies on Disney Plus? Yeah, they are right.
yeah, they are. Mm.
Yeah, so I'll have to rewatch it on Disney Plus. but I think it does it great. And again, don't get me wrong, I love Endgame, but this is hot takes. And
Hot
again,
take.
personally, I think the X-Men are way more enjoyable than the Avengers, and I would take the X-Men over the Avengers. So I gotta say again, if you don't believe me and you want to debate this, feel free to talk about it. But go and watch both of these movies. And again, I'm not gonna be biased towards anything. I like both of them equally. Again, I'm not a super fan of the X-Men. I'm not a super fan of the Avengers. I think the X-Men is just it's a lot bigger, and there's definitely the stakes are different in the terms of the universe and more of the mutants, but I just think the X-Men are more entertaining, and I think that's what beats it out because I think they both balance things very well, but especially in terms of stakes, villain, and this is almost like the Infinity War of X-Men movies in my opinion. Like almost perfect in that sense. Like this is the level in the X-Men trilogies and movies where this was peak for them. And when did this come out? Like 2015, 2016? I don't know, because after that, the X-Men kind of died down a little bit in the sense of how their movies went. It wasn't the greatest in the direction they went. Um, but yeah, so coming out with the 1-2 jab.
Okay. I'm gonna break it down two ways.
Break it down.
If we're talking simply about story, right, and we're just looking at these two movies from a story perspective, from start to finish,
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. I
Oh yeah.
agree that X-Men Days of Futures Past has a better story than Avengers Endgame. But if we were looking at it as a whole, overall, so animation, CGI, actors, actresses, villains, et cetera, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
I disagree with you
That's
because
understandable.
I think Avengers Endgame does better with its its characters, like with its actors and actresses. I think it does better with its villains only because Thanos is such a iconic villain. And really you could argue that the antagonist of Days of Futures Past was you can argue that it was either Peter Dinklage, obviously, because he was the one that created the Sentinels, or you can even argue that it was Jennifer Lawrence's character, depending on how you saw it. Because obviously, the main goal of Hugh Jackman was to go back in time and stop her, because what she does basically puts the future in motion. So,
Mm.
whether or not you want to look at it from that perspective. But I think the characters and the villain is better in Avengers Endgame. I think the cinematography and the CGI effects and everything. I think although X-Men did it well, I mean, again, that what really sticks out to me is that huge battle scene at the very end of Avengers Endgame. Like that's pretty much like the icing on the cake. Like that was like a part of like CGI masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
And like of course, like X-Men like had their fair share of like battle sequences. Like the very opening of the movie is like probably one of the best in like the X-Men movies.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like doing that like hallway by hallway scene of like the Sentinels like going in like wiping out the mutants. Like I thought that was really well done. But looking at both movies side by side, I definitely think Avengers has a beat there. So if we're looking at it like overall and we put all categories into effect, I disagree with you. But if we're looking at it from plainly story, like here's the plot, here's how the director wrote it, and then which one of these stories is better, I think X-Men is better than Avengers. Just because X-Men's story is more solid, it is simpler, it makes more sense. Avengers Endgame, not that it's all over the place, but it's just a lot. You got a lot of different characters doing a lot of different things. I mean, it's all for the same goal, but I just feel like I feel like in this argument, simplicity beats it over complication. So again, if we're looking at it from the stories, I agree with you and I agree with your hot take. But if we're looking at it from like every single aspect, then I have to disagree with you just because of how much more Avengers Endgame was able to do versus like X-Men in all the regards.
Fair.
So, but that was we're getting more and more spicy, boy. We're putting in the jalapenos, we're putting in the peppers, we're We're stirring that pot. We're getting spicy
Hello.
over here. Oh, what happened?
Hello.
Oh, all right. Well, we're gonna keep it spicy, and we're probably gonna go to what I think is like my hottest take in my opinion. So
Ooh.
this is my second take. I would have went numerically, but we ran out of time. So this is my second take. Bucky Barnes, Buchanan Barnes, Winter Soldier,
Mhm.
should have received Captain America shield in Falcon the Winter Soldier. And to further elaborate, he was the one that should have became Captain America.
Damn. All right.
Yeah. Hear me
I
out.
think.
Hear me out. I love Falcon and I love Sam Wilson as the actor who plays the Falcon. But if you're breaking down both characters and you're looking at Steve Rogers and and Bucky's relationship, and then you're looking at Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson's relationship, even though the Falcon and Captain America had a good relationship and they were friends, I'm not seeing like the super emotional connection that
Mhm.
makes makes it okay for him to become the next Captain America. Like when you look at it from like a broad perspective, what is the moment that you could be like, this is why he's Captain America, or this is why he should be the next Captain America. And for me personally, I don't see it. But when I look at Bucky and then I look at Steve, I could pick moments where I'm like, this is why he should be Captain America. And I think the biggest thing for me when it comes to choosing Bucky over Sam is because of Falcon the Winter Soldier and that journey that we see Bucky go on. I mean, we see his whole basically the whole his whole journey in the show is him suffering from PTSD and the horrors of his past. And he's learning throughout the whole entire show how to accept what he did and how to basically forgive himself for what he did. Because obviously we all know that, at the end of Captain America, he was presumed dead. He was taken in by Hydra. He was brainwashed, made the Winter Soldier. He was an assassin for years. He did a lot of terrible things. He was brought back because Captain America rescued him. He was sent to Wakanda. He got his memory back, so to speak. He was rehabilitated, and from there on, he worked towards like the path of righteousness.
Mhm.
And I feel like looking at his journey as a whole, versus Sam Wilson. I mean, granted, obviously, yes, Bucky is a lot older because obviously they're from different generations, so he has that extra time to kind of like cultivate his character and like his development over Sam Wilson. But I just think the journey that Bucky went through, the emotional relationship that both Steve and Bucky had, and yes, I know they're both technically super soldiers, but I think he's more deserving of it because I think the United States stands for the land of opportunity, and throughout Bucky's character development, he was given another opportunity. And what better way to represent the Shield is by having someone behind it that went through hell and came back and was given a second chance, just like how people go through hell and come to the United States and they're given a second chance.
I can see your
So that's the
point,
sauce. That's
and
that's the sauce I'm putting in.
it definitely is saucy. And like this was kind of talked about when Falcon and Winter Soldier came out, and like after Endgame and everything, because obviously we saw, Sam Wilson get the shield at the end of Endgame from Cap himself. And I don't know if I necessarily agree or disagree, because I feel like they're very different people, as in Bucky and Sam. Sam represents a part of that shield that a lot of people see themselves in. And Bucky represents a part of that shield, and like you said, a lot of people see themselves in. Now, honestly, I don't know if the Captain America story needs to continue with either of them, because I think they should just be their own people. Like I think the Falcon should be, the Falcon, and I think the Winter Soldier, but obviously I guess now Bucky should be Bucky, because I mean, I would love for them to kind of share the shield in a sense, because I feel like they both have deserving qualities of it. Of course, if you look at it in the sense of the emotional connection between the characters, as in Cap and Bucky compared to Cap and Sam. Cap and Bucky take that cake. Obviously Sam was a little more modern in that day because that was kind of somebody he connected. That was somebody Cap connected with, when he came out of the ice, compared to obviously not knowing of Bucky, even being alive at that time. And I think Falcon and Winter Soldier does a great job. Personally, I like Falcon and Winter Soldier. I haven't rewatched it since it came out, but I do like a lot of parts of it, and I feel like they show a lot of things that why Sam takes on the responsibility of that shield. But I feel like it's just a different story in the sense of what it was first, and um exactly why, like, when Captain America was Captain America in the first Captain America, it's like he was more in a sense of fighting for America, against that enemy of Hydra. And like, even though Hydra is really not a thing anymore, but it always still lingers. Um, it's like, what is that shield fighting for? Is that shield fighting for America itself? Or are we just having Captain America continue his story through other people? So personally, I don't necessarily agree in the sense of Bucky getting the shield, but I do see why he could have. But I think honestly, I'm excited to see where the story goes in, Captain America. What is it, New World Order or something? I'm excited to see where that story goes in the sense of how Bucky's going to play into the story as well, and what the future is with Sam as Cap. Um, but I really think after Cap's story was done, the Shield should have went with him. Because I feel like, again, that, like, it's kind of cheesy when Ant-Man says that's America's ass, but I feel like, again, like, Cap was like that portrayal of that sense of what that shield was. And even though changing times can change the definition of that shield, I feel like that story in terms of original the time that Captain America was in is over, and it shifted towards something else, where I think both of them should be their own character in the sense of fighting for the same thing, but not behind the shield.
Mhm.
So I think it's definitely a hot take, and it's interesting because I feel like we could do a whole episode on that. But I wouldn't say I disagree or agree. I think I'm kind of just neutral on the aspect of it and Captain America.
That's fair. No, I see arguments for both points.
All right. Well, yeah, these are surprising. I don't think I expected any of yours. Um, all right, let's see. Which one do I want to do next? Okay, so the Guardians is a better team than the Avengers. The Guardians is a better family than the Avengers. And the Guardians are the freaking Guardians of the Galaxy, man. No, so why I say this is obviously we have a lot of story with the Avengers, not as much with the Guardians, right? Different people, different stories to both of that. Obviously we have leaders of the Guardians, we have leaders of the Avengers, but personally, I feel like even going through Avengers Age of Ultron, Infinity War, and Endgame, I never really felt the bond in that team in the sense where they truly cared. Like, I feel like a lot of things that were said from certain characters are just brushed over. Like, I feel like in Endgame, we see Thor at his lowest. Like, this is a god at his lowest. And it's really like they don't seem to actually care.
I think it was
Like,
more of like
it's, well,
the
yes, I know, but it's
no,
it's
I was gonna say
obviously,
I think it's more like that the Avengers, like as a whole, instead of having that like emotional relationship like together as a group, they had it individually. I mean, we saw a strong connection between Clint and Natasha.
well,
We
that's what
saw
I mean.
we saw a strong connection, between Natasha and Bruce, and then like so each of them kind of had their own little individual connections. I mean, when they came together, I think of course they cared about each other, but I would have to agree with your take, honestly. I think the Guardians are actually a better group, and I think they are more emotionally connected and bonded with one another over the Avengers. And I think that's what makes watching the Guardians so enjoyable because I mean they're practically a family. And
I
there's something saying that when they escaped that prison, in the very first one, that they could have just went their own ways and never saw each other again. But I mean, here we are, 3 movies later, and they're all still together. So
especially
I totally agree with your take, to be honest.
especially when we see like parts of them in like other Avengers movies or cameos in other movies. I feel like even in that first, I mean, more so in the second one, you see a lot more of a bond. But I feel like even in that first one, there's a lot of development from the beginning of that film to the end of that film, um, in terms of how we actually see and actually no, I won't give away my next one.
And like,
But
not
in
only does
terms,
like the the characters develop personally, but while they're also developing personally, they're also developing together. So it's like they can still have their own individual character development, but they can still develop as a group.
yeah,
So
I mean,
I agree. I think it's a pretty solid take. I don't think it's too far out there, to be honest. I mean, I think a lot of people would agree with you.
yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was pretty I didn't think it was totally out there when I was saying it, but I know a lot of people because there is very personable connections between obviously like Bruce and
Yeah.
Natasha
Well, I
and
mean,
all
when you
that.
look at like if you're talking about like from more like an emotional or like familial relationship, then yes, Guardians is obviously better than Avengers. But if you're looking at in terms of strength, then like obviously Avengers is more talented than Guardians. But if you're looking for that like special emotional connection, then yes, Guardians is definitely the stronger and more bonded group, with a
Well, yeah,
relationship versus
that's what
Avengers.
I mean. It's like I'm not saying like I
Yeah,
don't know how
no,
many
no,
millions later, but yeah,
I completely agree, and I think a lot of people would actually agree with you. I think you'd be surprised how many people kind of are in the same boat. Everybody loves Guardians. I never really heard anybody say anything bad about Guardians, so I think a lot of people would agree with your take.
yeah. I honestly, I would love to do a whole episode on. I mean, maybe we could do it after the third Guardians came out. We could do an episode on each Guardians movie because Guardians is one of the best projects to come out of the MCU.
Yeah.
That just has to be common knowledge at this point. But yeah, I mean that was my second to last take. I feel like my first take is a little.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not crazy.
we kind of cooled it down on the spice a little bit. We didn't go too okay. I feel like my last two are kind of like they're not really spicy, but they got a little like sauce to it.
Hmm.
So fourth on the list, because I already did my third one. So my fourth one on the list is almost kind of like a two-parter. So, simply put, Captain Marvel is a good movie, but it's only a good movie if you watch it more than once.
Okay, explain.
So I feel like if you sit and you watch Captain Marvel just once, because obviously this was one of Marvel's like first times like introducing a character outside of the Avengers.
Yeah,
And I feel like because it was a new character and it was a whole new setting, even though it had like characters like Nick Fury and everything in it, I feel like if you sat there and you just watched it once, you were just like, what the hell just happened? Like, what was that? And why the reason why I say you have to watch it more than once is because I remember me and you went to go see like Captain Marvel probably like 5 or 6 times because there was just literally
yeah.
nothing else out in the theater and we just had all the free time in the world. And I noticed that as I kept watching it more and more, I started to like it more and more. So I think for a film like this, you need to give yourself time to like continue to watch it and analyze it. And I think if you watch it more than once, you're going to like it. But if you watch it just once and then move on, you're not going to like it. Like I am not a huge Captain Marvel fan, but again, if I would have sat and just watched the movie once, I would have been like, okay, like that was okay, it was nothing special. But after watching it, I was like, you know what? I was like, it might not be the best movie, but I was like, it was an enjoyable movie. I mean, it had some comedy to it. I mean, I think Brie Larson does a great job, as Captain Marvel, and all the little side characters, like the Skrulls and the cat that had giant tentacles in its mouth, all great.
You mean the Flarkin, whose name is Goose?
yeah, the Flerken whose name is Goose. Yeah, thank you. Um,
They said
so
no
yeah,
goose.
I mean it's again pretty mellow, but I mean that's kind of one of my hot takes.
I agree with you because again, I remember going and watching Avengers. Sorry, I remember going and watching Captain Marvel several times, and you're right. Like at first watch, it's nothing crazy, and I feel like Marvel did put it out right before Endgame because she was going to be in Endgame. So they were just introducing her so we know kind of who the hell Captain Marvel was, if you didn't read the comics or anything. And a lot of people have things to say about Brie Larson in terms of the character and, her thinking maybe that she's the most powerful or blah, 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 how exactly they use her. It's not necessarily up to Brie Larson, it's up to Marvel. However they want to use their characters is unfortunately the characters have to do it like that. Like yes, there's freedom to playing a character, but in your own introduction movie, you don't really get a chance to choose exactly how stuff is written. And I feel like when you go back, there are a decent amount of enjoyable things in the film. Like again, I do enjoy the scrolls, and obviously there's a future of the scrolls in the MCU, so I like that introduction. I enjoy seeing young Nick Fury, and I kind of like I don't mind Brie Larson's backstory. Is it the most fast? I'm sorry, not Brie Larson's. I don't mind Captain Marvel's backstory. Is it the most fascinating? No, it's not. Is it, are the side characters the most interesting? Not necessarily. But again, if it's something you rewatch, I don't think you would hate on it as much as people do. And I think again, that's what people do. They watch something once and they're like, that wasn't good. Done. They're not gonna pick it up again. And I think that's what happens with a good chunk of the movies in the MCU. So if you guys are out there and you're Captain Marvel haters, I mean that's cool, I guess. But always go back and try to give something a try again because it's like
Yeah,
food. You might get it the first time and absolutely hate it because it was made wrong, and then you might enjoy it the second time, or you might get it when you were 5 and then enjoy it when you're 25. Because your palate has changed. I don't know, but no, I agree with that. But I think a lot of people aren't gonna agree because a lot of people don't agree that Captain Marvel's a good movie.
like I said, it's not the best, but you know what? I could sit there and I could rewatch it again and be like, okay, like, this made me laugh. This was good. Was it pretty good? No, it was just good. It was just kind of like mid tier. So
Yeah, interesting. All right, so my final and last hot take is okay. Nebula has the
okay,
best character growth in the MCU.
wow,
Best character growth and best character development, in my opinion. Now, I know people will argue with me right away and say things such as, oh, what about Tony Stark? What about Bucky? What about blah, 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 Wanda, and, so on. But I feel if you go back and you watch Nebula's first film, which I believe she was in the first Guardians, if I remember correctly.
yeah, mhm,
I believe that was her first introduction we got of her. And she hasn't been in crazy amount of projects, but at least 4 or so. If you go back and you see her in the beginning, and especially if you see her through Endgame, Infinity War, and a second Guardians movie, not only does her relationship grow and you see the relationship change between her and Gamora, which I think is one of the best parts of that Guardians timeline and movies, but especially in Endgame, you see a good amount of Nebula in a specific part of it that really shows this character growth and development. And I think Guardians 3 is going to close that out. And I'm actually excited to see a lot more of it because I feel like she is underlooked in the sense of her character. Like, just if you have time, go back and rewatch the movies Nebula's in, then come back to this episode and tell me whether I was right or not. Because again, yes, we can argue all day that Tony Stark or all these other characters may, have had plenty of movies, plenty of time, and all this different character growth. But I think if you really look at it and you see how well the things she was in were made, I think she takes the cake in the sense of how her character has grown and where it is now and became the actual um, person we see on screen today.
I'm gonna keep this brief just because we only have like 10 minutes left, so I want to like briefly respond to yours and then get on to my final one and then close it out. I agree that she has good character development. I do. She develops well throughout the films. The fact that she has the best character development in the MCU, I completely disagree. Out of all the characters in the entire MCU, I completely disagree that she has the best development. I can think of somebody from Phase 4 that has better development than her, and they had a TV series, and that was Moon Knight. I think Moon Knight over a TV series had better character development than Nebula had in these last three movies.
Well, I haven't seen Moon Knight, so I can't say.
Yeah, and again, I can think of a few other characters. I think Thor has had better development than her. I think the Hulk has had better development than her. Um, I think Wanda has had better development than her. Um, so there are a few. I again, she has good development. Don't get me wrong, but being the best, that's a hard argument because I mean, you would have a lot of people coming at you with a bunch because there are so many characters in the MCU. It's
Well,
really
yeah.
hard to choose like if there really is just a sole person that has the best development. I think different characters have different levels of development, and I think she has development. She does. I mean, it's clearly shown that she does. But having the best, I, I can't agree with you on that part. But I could agree that she has good character development. I just can't agree that she's the best.
That's
And
understandable.
that is spicy. And
Yeah, that
that's
that
very
that was one
spicy.
I definitely
But
thought was
when
gonna
I when
get.
I saw that, I was like, what? I was like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we could just easily close it out. My last take is not too spicy. So basically, I think Phase 3 of the MCU is better than Phase 4.
Just remind me of the beginning of Phase 3.
So Phase 3 is the following. Phase 3 is Captain America: Civil War, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Spider-Man: Homecoming, Thor: Ragnarok, Black Panther, Avengers: Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, Avengers: Endgame, and Spider-Man: Far From Home. And Phase 4 was WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Black Widow, Loki, What If, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Hawkeye, Spider-Man: No Way Home, Moon Knight, Doctor Strange, Miss Marvel, Thor: Love and Thunder, She-Hulk, Werewolf by Night, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, and the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. And I'm simply just going to say the reason why, even though Phase 3 had no movies in it, I mean, I'm sorry, no shows in it, overall, when you look at the projects side by side, Phase 4 movies, let's start with movies. Phase 4 movies have been debatable. All the Phase 4 movies that have came out, Black Widow, Thor, Doctor Strange, they've all been debatable. There was
Mm.
never like, oh, they were good. In fact, most of the oh nice, Florida won in overtime. Um, most of the movies in Phase 4 have been debatable. They've had a lot of controversy around them, and I don't, so they don't have a good repertoire. The shows I think absolutely kill it. I think the shows are what kills it because there are good shows like Moon Knight and WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but there are also terrible shows like Miss Marvel and She-Hulk. And What If is decent, but it's not the best. Um,
Mhm.
so I think when you look at it overall, just in a standard of quality, I think Phase 3 is a lot better than Phase 4. And I mean, if you want to
I agree.
make a quick
I,
remark, I mean,
yeah, just because we are running out of time, but I do agree in the sense of overall, and we could talk about this all day, but the projects are just in certain aspects miles better than Phase 4. Again, there's a lot to Phase 4 to like, but there's also a lot to dislike, and I think in Phase 3 there's really not much to dislike. So I agree, and I think that cooled it down a little bit, definitely
I
from
think
my last
that's the
one.
perfect way to end it by just cooling down the pot a little bit.
For sure,
And
for sure.
for now to heat. I mean, that's it, guys. I mean, those are all our takes. I mean, we can go on and on about. We could have put together a bigger list, but we
Oh
wouldn't
yeah.
have had enough time, and this would have been like
Oh
a
yeah.
3-4 part thing. Um,
Yes, would have been
So
like a
those are
4 hour episode.
those are just a couple. I think this would be fun to do with like Star Wars, and like DC and just other things. I mean, I already thought of some for Star Wars, so it'd be like really cool to do Star Wars hot take. Um, But thank you guys for coming out and tuning into this episode where we go over some of our own personal hot takes when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As always, thank you guys for listening. We always enjoy your support, no matter how big or how small it is. We should be back to a pretty somewhat normal recording schedule. I was discussing with my brother, next week we're definitely going to put out a May the 4th episode, just for Star Wars, because come on, we can't put out a May, so. And then maybe next week will be a 2-episode week, because we might sit down and break down the Guardians of the Galaxy trailer before the movie comes out, just to kind of get some last minute thoughts, what we expect. And then maybe we'll come back after we see it, and then we'll do a Guardians of the Galaxy breakdown. So expect either just 1 episode or 2 episodes next week. We'll work out the details. But no, like I said, thank you guys for coming out today. We always appreciate the support. You can find us on our socials at Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Two Sons Podcast. That's with an O, not a U, because guess what? We are two brothers.
So
also check us out on YouTube. That is also Two Sons Podcast. Again, that is with an O, not a U, because we are also two brothers, if you couldn't tell. The videos come out on Wednesday for the YouTube, and then the podcast episodes, for Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever you listen to podcasts on, come out Thursday morning. So expect these episodes Thursday morning. Expect the YouTube episodes Wednesday night. Depending on how viewership is and analytics, I might push the day when I post the episodes to a different day. But for now, they're gonna stick with Wednesday, just because we record on Wednesday, so it's just easier to upload it right away.
yeah.
But seriously, thank you guys for all the support. Hopefully you enjoy the content coming your way. Please let us know what you thought of our hot takes. Give us some of your own. If you have any hot takes for Star Wars, throw them in the comments below, so we can maybe use some of those suggestions for an episode. Let us know what you think about Guardians of the Galaxy. Are you excited to see it? What do you think of the trailer? What do you think is going to happen? And with that being said, I'm going to turn the mic to my wonderful brother, and I hope you guys have a good day, good night, good evening, whenever you're watching this. May the force be with you, and that is all from me.
Yes. And by the way, guys, again, I think our audience generally enjoys more episodes like this. I love doing movie reviews, but I think our podcast has grown more doing episodes like this. So we probably will continue with this format. Please let us know, interact with us on social media. Again, that is on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and now YouTube, all under Two Sons Podcast. That is Sons with an O, not a U, because again, we are two brothers. I think we can get, my dream and hopes are to obviously get us to Comic Cons and stuff like that one day, which is possible because I just saw that, Soups went on that podcast that we were talking about that's on TikTok, that, with the guy that has really terrible takes. He did some serious meat riding with Soups, to definitely get him on. But there's no reason we can't get up to that, because I definitely think our episodes are one of a kind. But once again, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for being patient. I'm sorry that our schedule isn't as consistent as we would like it to be. Hoping in the next month and a half or so, it will get to that point and we will be consistently doing this, because again, we are actually, I believe after today, this will be our 40th episode. If it is, that's crazy to me. And, I can't wait to do 40 more, 100 more, even though that's not even the correct word. Once again, thank you guys for listening. Stay safe, stay alert, don't do anything stupid. Have a great night, great evening, good morning, good afternoon, and have a good.
Have a good one, guys.
Yeah, have a good one.